8 provinces, and in the middle of it all we have Hyrule Castle. Visible from all of Hyrule's peaks in Breath of the Wild, it stands there majestically teasing the player from the moment we hold the box of the game for the first time, and upon starting the game, leaving the Shrine of Resurrection for the first time. As it turned out for a very good reason, as never prior in the Zelda series had Hyrule Castle been a more important location than in Breath of the Wild, revolutionizing how we explore Hyrule's icon and locate hidden history, lore, and some of the most powerful items in the entire game. Destroying Calamity Ganon's evil and saving Princess Zelda in her home was the great goal in Breath of the Wild, and the malice-free castle was our reward. Even so, it looks like the sequel will turn the mighty seat of Hyrule's royal family into Ganondorf's floating castle. So let's find out how it will work and what will be inside Breath of the Wild 2's Hyrule Castle. But first, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and press that notification bell as we begin our climb for 300,000 subscribers. Once again, thank you so much for 250,000. We have reached our final destination across our long journey of the known provinces found in Breath of the Wild and likely to be present in Breath of the Wild sequel, Hyrule Castle, the treasure vault full of guardians, Lynels, and items like the Hylian shield, which now is about to leave a big crater behind as the ancient Sheikah mechanisms are activated to, just like in Studio Ghibli's Castle in the Sky, bring Hyrule Castle to places it has never been before. That or turning into the biggest divine beast we have ever seen, as those things we see might be massive divine beast or guardian-like legs. So pretty much Howl's moving castle. Seriously, go and check out our video on Breath of the Wild's Japanese and Studio Ghibli's inspiration after this one. So flying or rising up to a point where it can't be climbed. No matter what, the castle is no longer there and will not be accessible until most likely the endgame. That is unless Ganondorf is bringing the castle to space. After all, you have all those ancient Sheikah constellations in the Astral Observatory where we fought Calamity Ganon, Ganondorf's puppet. This location appeared to be the deepest chamber in the castle, with the entire icon of Hyrule rising to a level comparable to some of Hyrule's tallest peaks. You bet that there's way more hiding underneath what we got to explore in Breath of the Wild. An underground or divine beast-like area, based on those mechanical legs that might serve as a whole dungeon before we even reach the structure we fell in love with in Breath of the Wild. This brings a question. Is a new underground dungeon enough, or will we see a massive transformation from the King of Hyrule's castle to Ganondorf's castle? Much like what was the case in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. There's little doubt that the Zelda team is building up to something, forcing Link to be left-handed just like the hero of time, Ganondorf taking control of Hyrule Castle and transforming it into something radically different and dangerous without shortcuts. That's right, it might be that the Waterfall Zora Tunic shortcut is gone in the sequel with the moving castle. Naturally, this implies a more hazardous and filled with enemies path up to the Sanctum, or perhaps a different chamber, one that we couldn't enter and explore before in Breath of the Wild, but which might serve a massive role in the sequel, namely the Great Hall. Creating a champion states that this massive chamber is located in a portion of the castle that was sealed off by the extensive damage caused by the Great Calamity. In other words, the perfect location for the ultimate showdown between the left-handed hero of the wild with the fully powered Master Sword and a much stronger Ganondorf than the mummy we saw in the reveal trailer. Just like the left-handed hero of time fought against Ganondorf in Ocarina of Time. Based on concept art, the Great Hall had pretty much everything, stairs and pillars to make this into something different than past confrontations, which every time took place on flat terrain. This place would be perfect for some magical exchanges between the Miser's hatred and the spirit of the hero. I can already imagine it. Though before we get to the King of Evil himself, there will certainly be plenty of traps, puzzles, locked doors, powerful enemies like the missing in Breath of the Wild Darkness and Iron Knuckles to name a few, plus a mini-boss or two, all of which are required to turn this already amazing castle into the best final dungeon, with the best final boss battle that we have seen in the entire Zelda series. Ultimate final for a confrontation that was technically 10 years in the making. The reward needs to be incredible after an amazing chase after the mobile castle. Did you seriously think Ganondorf would just wait for us to come and kill him after breaking free in front of Link, who already was wielding wielding the fully powered Master Sword and Zelda who was on a personal vendetta? Absolutely not. This will be a hunt and much of the game will revolve around bringing the castle to a halt. First, close to the ending of the game, we're likely to enter Ganondorf's fortress and malice-filled death trap, which we will need to clear with Link's new Zonai hand and whatever additional upgrades we collect to it through our quest. No doubt, Ganondorf is once again only breaking free for a limited time as the day of Hyrule's redemption will come, but until then he will probably bring more suffering and destruction to the former kingdom. Anyway, for the rest of this video we want to go more in depth into how to turn this final dungeon into the most spectacular experience in the entire Zelda series. And to give us a little taste of the great potential dwelling within the structure, we decided to lay out a vision on how to bring Breath of the Wild 2's most interesting landmark to the next level. First things first. Hyrule Castle is gigantic. When we first entered this area in Breath of the Wild, the task of ascending up seemed to be a huge undertaking. But in true Breath of the Wild fashion, non-linearity and freedom of choice was the name of the game once again, even in this final location. With the exception of the sanctum itself, the castle interior can be completely ignored if you want to have a straight shot at Calamity Ganon, which is a shame as the castle interior is one of, if not the most interesting location found in all of Breath of the Wild. Due to Hyrule Castle's architecture, the progression through the dungeon will, much like in Breath of the Wild, once again be by starting from the bottom and working our way up gradually. As previously mentioned, the waterfalls found in Breath of the Wild's rendition of Hyrule Castle will likely disappear after the castle rises up from the ground, as there will no longer be a water source to support them. So even if we still have the Zora tunic at our disposal, this quick ascent to the top of the castle will no longer be an option. However, as the castle stands right now, climbing up the side of the exterior walls would still be a possibility. In order to prevent Hyrule Castle from once again becoming one of the shortest final dungeon experiences ever, if you're purely going for the final goal, which in the case of the sequel will be the confrontation with Ganondorf, boundaries and limitations will need to be put in place. This can be achieved in multiple ways. One of course being the use of malice, which was already present in the castle in Breath of the Wild, but in rather small quantities. A second option would be other types of surfaces and objects that either deal damage when touched, or adding a non-lethal method like an unclimbable barrier surrounding the outer walls of each floor. Remember, this is Ganondorf's castle now, and during the span of the game, he could have plenty of time to make architectural changes to the castle and fortify it. If we look at Ganon's castle in Ocarina of Time, we can see that its outer walls are topped off with spikes as a means of defense. This is precisely what Ganondorf could do to bar off every floor, which means the only way up to the next floor would be through its interior. In Breath of the Wild, the main way into the castle was through the main gate, which was a bridge that crosses the moat surrounding the castle. However, with the castle rising up, this bridge has most likely been destroyed. If you want to reach the upper floors of the castle, we will most likely have to start from an even lower level, namely the underground sections below the castle. From there, we'll have to make our way up through the network of caves to reach the ground floor of the castle. Most traditional 3D Zelda dungeons incorporate the central room, from which the dungeon splits off into multiple directions, and you revisit this area multiple times as you progress. Does Hyrule Castle have a central room like this? As a matter of fact, yes, namely the reception room. Creating a Champion states the following: this large room is adjacent to the observation room. It is possible to access a great many locations of the castle by using this room as a hub. Unfortunately, after the calamity, the front door is buried in rubble. Well, there you have it, a central room that branches off into many of the other locations found inside the castle. If most of the rubble is cleared out either by Ganondorf or by workers under the command of Princess Zelda prior to Ganondorf's awakening, this room could function as the central hub of the massive dungeon. From here we will be able to unlock the castle piece by piece by collecting keys, opening locked doors, solving puzzles, defeating enemies and mini-bosses, and maybe even obtain a late game item to access other parts of the castle. We don't know exactly where the final confrontation will play out, or if it will even be in Hyrule Castle in the first place. But if the final battle will indeed take place within the castle itself, the Great Hall, as we have already mentioned, will likely be the best. The Sanctum is a bit small, and much like the Astral Observatory room, it will be a bit repetitive if we have the final fight with Ganondorf in the same location as Calamity Ganon. The Great Hall would indeed be the most fitting and poetic location for a duel between good and evil, a nostalgic nod to Twilight Princess, where half of the final boss fight also played out in Hyrule Castle's Great Hall, or in that case the Throne Room. Creating a Champion doesn't specifically state where the Great Hall is supposed to be located, but on the map there's a large open space in between all the explorable rooms, so it's likely to be located somewhere in the center of the castle's middle floor. The front door of the reception room is currently blocked, but it seems to lead exactly to the center of the castle. If this is indeed the location where Ganondorf will reside, the door to it could simply be locked, or we could see a traditional item which was absent from Breath of the Wild make a return, namely the boss key. Naturally, this key would have to be found in one of the upper floors or just hidden deep inside the castle. The most logical would be the Sanctum. By unlocking the castle's many areas bit by bit and slowly ascending to the castle's highest floor, you eventually find the key to gain access to the Great Hall, and thus the final fight with the Demon King himself. Whereas in Breath of the Wild, Hyrule Castle was an open-air endeavor, much like the rest of the overworld, in the sequel, Nintendo will have to mix it up to make the experience feel fresh and new, by approaching the castle in a more traditional sense, and turning this location that we already have explored extensively to something new, unfamiliar, and most of all, challenging. And much like adding the missing Great Hall, also include other rooms, chambers and underground tunnels that were previously unseen because of debris and rubble, or simply unexplorable, making the dungeon even larger than it was previously. And there you have it, the potential for Ganondorf's newly acquired lair, from which he will be able to torment Hyrule once again. In Breath of the Wild, Hyrule Castle was a broken down, decrepit shadow of its former self. In Breath of the Wild 2, the castle could be refurbished and turned into a final obstacle by Ganondorf himself in order to prolong his final confrontation, a reunion with the Sword of Evil's Bane, wielded by the hero who has been a thorn in his side for many ages, all the way back to the era of the Hero of Time. But what do you think? Sound off in the comments below if you have any ideas regarding Hyrule Castle in Breath of the Wild 2. And as always, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe and hit that shiny notification bell to not miss our upcoming videos. A big thanks goes to our gracious Patreon supporters on patreon.com/commonrealm. You can join them too by following the link right here or down in the description. That's all for this time, but we will see you soon, and in the meantime, why not enjoy one of these two awesome videos.